Well, the Children's Commissioner's Office will be conducting a review of Oranga Tamariki's care and protection of Māori babies from birth to 3 months old. Last month, Hawke's Bay Hospital was put into lockdown when social workers tried to take a newborn from its 19-year-old mother. It sparked widespread complaints about the organisation's practice of removing Māori babies from whānau. Well, just before 7:30 this morning, the Minister for Children, Tracy Martin, told us on Morning Report nobody wants 3 Māori babies uplifted every week. But it doesn't deserve the term stolen generation. With us now, the Children's Commissioner, Judge Andrew Becroft, is in the Wellington studio with me. I don't know if you had a chance to hear Tracy Martin and the interview there, but is it fair to call it a stolen generation?
When you look at the stats, Susie, you can well understand the concern. For instance, Māori children in care have increased and are increasing since 2000 consistently. Babies removed at birth have gone from 2 a week to 3 a week in the last 4 years, although dropped ever so slightly last year. You can well understand why people use that term. Alarm bells should be going off throughout New Zealand when that term, coined in Australia with a different legislative setting, is being applied here. We ought to be concerned. It's one of the reasons that we're undertaking this review.
Is Oranga Tamariki relatively recently established, but is it in a retrievable state?
Well, you ask a fundamental question. I can tell you this. What was the old Child, Youth and Family was broken. It was reactive. It was SOS, emergency, ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, highly interventionist. The new model is prevention-focused, early intervention, work with hapu and iwi for Indigenous Māori children, devolve resources. Judicial language not usually would use the word revolution, but what is dreamed of in the new legislation is nothing short of a revolution. In answer to your question, I know 2 things. Unquestionably, the National Office want to bring about change and mean business. But I also know for children at the coalface throughout the country, the change isn't yet being seen across the country. That's the challenge. And the law, the new model, kicks in 1 July. So as for 1 July, that's less than a few weeks away, the revolution has got to start taking place.
So does that mean that Māori are being racially profiled now by people at the coalface, and as of the 1st of July that's going to have to stop?
You use that in the sense of a deliberate approach. I think it's much better to say that New Zealand-wide, whether it's in the justice system, and we heard from the report last week that racism infects every area of the justice system, whether it's education, and our own reports have had children themselves talk about decisions that they call racist, whether it's in health outcomes, well-being outcomes, or Oranga Tamariki, we cannot shrink from the fact in New Zealand that there's a long-term legacy of colonisation that exists and disadvantages Māori, and there's modern-day unconscious bias and systemic disadvantage. And I must say, that's exactly what was said back in 86, 87, 88, which led to Child, Youth and Family Services. Read it. Department of Social Welfare was called racist, was called institutional, was called discriminatory in its practice, and everything was meant to change back in 89.
But it didn't.
So that is why this is a second chance for a revolution, that we blew it really in 89. We've got that opportunity. We can't muck it up this time.
And you're perfectly clear that it is about the legacy, the enduring and indeed ongoing legacy of colonialism, and that's something that has to be dealt with. So how deal with that? Is that by giving more money directly to iwi, to Māori, so that they can help their own?
Yeah, you are getting into wide areas of economics and social intervention that some might say a children's commissioner is ill-equipped to talk about. But yes,
But essentially it's like, are you giving more money to the state to do more state work, or are you going to give more money, or should more money go to Māori to look after their own? It's
both and. But the new legislative approach talks about delegation and devolution of power and resources. That's what's going to happen. In my view, one of the reasons why the 1989 vision in the end withered on the vine was the failure to properly resource and work with hapu and iwi. That's what's got to change. So you're dead right. Some structural rejigging will need to take place, and that involves the D words: delegation, devolution.
Does it also involve decolonisation, and does that come about as a result of some of the changes that will take place at the beginning of July?
Yes and yes. No way around that. And it does for all major government institutional decision makers. And the literature is clear. I think we're beyond, as a country, that debate. The answer is, how do we fix it?
Do you have confidence in the current Minister for Children and in the boss of Oranga Tamariki, Gráinne Moss, to carry this through?
You know, that is not a question for me. I'm not someone who employs them or appoints them.
But you work with them.
Yeah, I work with them, but my job is to monitor and assess the policies and practices of Oranga Tamariki. That is my focus.
Are they doing a good job?
The new chief executive has got a massive job. It's the most broken system, frankly, imaginable that was inherited. Read the Rebstock report. It is too early to say. I'm not into giving marks or scorecards. All I know is the challenge is enormous, principally at the feet of the government in Oranga Tamariki, but we all need to be involved. But we'll be looking very carefully. We can't settle for another shattered dream that didn't deliver. This has got to be our chance in this generation to make sure there's an enduring difference that means every child in New Zealand is properly loved and nourished.
Thank you very much for your time. That's Judge Andrew Becroft, the Children's Commissioner, at 10 to 8.
Anti-mining protesters are accusing a security firm of sending an undercover worker in to spy on them ahead of the